Okay. So now we've added in our plant feature classes. I'm going to explain a little bit about how these work. So figuring out how to deal with plants in the GIS is a little bit tricky because they're kind of organic. Well, they are organic, and they move around a lot. And they're not necessarily. It's not necessarily a one size fits all kind of thing when you're dealing with mapping plants. So the system that we set up to deal with this in the GIS is that we have two main feature classes, and one is called mass planting and one is called a center. So the plant center is the main feature class, and that allows us to have every plant that we have in our collection listed in one spot. So it holds information about every plant, and it has all the taxonomy information and some information related to the growth habit and the size of the plant stored in that one plant center feature class. Now we also have another feature class for mapping groups of plants. So if we have an example I like to use is we have a wildflower garden. And in a particular part of that wildflower garden, we know that we have 4 different species of plants growing in there, but it wouldn't make any sense to map them individually because they're going to die, and then they're going to come back next year, and they're all going to be in different spots. So the system that we've set up is you can draw a polygon, a mass planting polygon, around that group of plants. And then what we do is we put a center point, or a plant center, we're going to call it. It's not really a center. But we put a point inside that polygon for each individual species that we have. So if we have 4 different species of plants growing inside that polygon, we'd stick 4 separate points in there. And those points just let us know that we have these 4 different species. And each point has the taxonomic information for that species. But then we link the polygon to the points so that if you click on the polygon, you get the information about all 4 of those plants. And that's a system that we've set up for dealing with that, and it tends to work pretty well. Now, if you have just a regular plant that doesn't have that's not growing in a mass, like a tree or a shrub, and you just want to know the location of that plant, you would put the point in the approximate center of it. So if you're out there with a GPS unit measuring that plant's location, you get as close as you can to the center of that plant and record the point there. Are there any questions on how that works? All right. And additionally, we have the Plant Center Annotation feature class, which is where we store all of our labels related to the plants. So that when we're making our maps, that's where that information gets stored. Okay. So let's go in here, and I'm going to turn off my planting areas because they're kind of obscuring the photo here. So scroll down in the table of contents and turn off planting area. All right, so the first thing we're going to want to do is let's start off doing a mass planting. And now, what I've done here is so in the data that you've downloaded, if you open the Windows Explorer from down here. Oh, actually, you know what? I did not give you those, actually. I'm going to make you go on the internet to get those. Okay, let's do this. Open up a web browser. Actually, how's our time? Never mind. I'm going to skip that step too. Never mind. We're gonna do this a little bit simpler. I was going to give you an actual collection map and have you take the actual names of the plants off there, but it'll be more fun making up plant names. We'll do that. Okay. Mia says she can tell us all the plant names, so we'll see how it goes. Okay. All right. So I know that there's this big group of plants down here that I want to map. So I'm going to grab the zoom in tool from the toolbar there. It's got the plus icon on it. I'm going to zoom in to this little area here, and I want to map this big group of plants right here. Now to do that, we're going to need to start editing again. So from the editor toolbar, let's start editing, and then our create features palette comes up. And now our mass plantings and our plant centers are not on here, so again we have to add these to that. So to do that, go up to the mass plantings layer, right click on it, edit features. Can you drag it? Let's try it. Can we do that? Nope, doesn't do it. All right, so anyway, click on mass plantings, right click on it, edit features, organize feature template. hit the New Template button, and then hit Finish, and hit Close. And now you can see that the subtypes for our mass planting are based on how many species that we have inside this mass planting. Now I know that this particular one that we're going to do, it's just one species of plant that's in there, so we're going to click on the homogeneous subtype here. And now since my Create Features palette is blocking the area I'm going to work in, I'm going to pan here. So grab the pan tool and pan over until we can see that whole plant. Okay, so to draw in our planting, we grab the homogeneous mass planting type here, and then start clicking along what appears to be the boundary of this plant. And most of the time when you're mapping your plants, you're going to want to either go out in the field and do it so you can see them, or you're going to want to use a GPS unit or something more accurate to record that information. But for the purpose of this exercise here, just going to kind of estimate what I see from the photo. And again, when you're ready to close that polygon, you double click, and the attributes window should come up. We just did masses so far, yeah. How's everybody doing with this? Okay? Okay, so I'm going to slowly move forward here. So the attributes window is up here, and we want to enter a little bit of information about this mass planting. So again, just like always, it has an ID field that we're just going to copy the object ID and put in number 1. It's our first mass planting. And then it already has our type filled in. It's homogeneous, so it only has one species of plant inside of this polygon. And then we have a thing here called for planting size. And this field is to approximate the number of individuals that you have inside of a mass planting. And the only reason that we have this is so that you can actually estimate how many specimens you have in your collection. So you can ballpark this. And we have some drop-downs set up here. And you can change these values to be whatever you'd like for your particular collection. We have pretty broad categories. But I know that there's only a relatively small amount of individuals in here. Individual stems, so we're just going to go with small for the planting size. And now here it's got a thing for section name, and when I click on it, it only has unknown and other, so it's not really, it doesn't have an option for our particular section name because the data model came empty and it doesn't know what the names of the sections are in your garden, but we've created this list so that you could easily populate it. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into our catalog and actually add some values to this list so that our section name comes up in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and we'll fill out the rest of this information, and then we'll come back to section name and collection name. Or actually, you can even put in other, and you use other for the section name and the collection name for now, and then we'll come back and fix those. So to click on the survey date field here, you can click the down, it brings up calendar control, and survey date is meant to be the date that you first drew this polygon in, or you first went out in the field and measured it with a GPS. So today is that day, so I hit today at the bottom, and it puts in today's date. And then under username, it has this drop-down list, but it doesn't have anybody's names in here, so because we haven't filled that in the data model. So we're just going to leave that as new user now, and then we'll go and we'll populate that list and come back to it. Then we have fields for update date in here. And update would mean if you went out maybe a year from now and you wanted to remeasure that plant because you know that it's grown significantly, or that group of plants, you would keep the survey date the same, but then you would type in the date that you went out and updated it. But you can also use this as if you've made any changes to the attribute information. So If a week from now you actually find out that something is different about this plant, then you come back and you change the attributes, and you would want to type in an update date then. But since we're just going to leave it, we're not doing any updates to it, I'll just set the date to be today, or you could alternatively leave that blank. That's up to you. And the update username, same thing as we're going to have to add to this list, so we're leaving it as new user for now. And then that's it, and then we're going to hit OK. And it finishes our polygon. Okay, so now we want to go add those values to those drop-down lists so that we can have better information. So to do that, we need to stop editing and save our edits. And then from the catalog window here, you can pin that open. And hopefully it should open back up to the spot that we were last time. It should have our database open. If not, again, you can hit the default geodatabase button or go to folder connections in the drop down here to get to our database. Now if we right click on the UC Davis Arboretum 0.19 there, we can scroll down and hit properties, and you'll see that it's got some properties about the database. And there's not a lot in here, it just tells us that what the version of the database is and things like that. But then there's this tab for domains, and these are those lists of valid values that we have set up for this geodatabase. And you can see if you scroll down in the top part here, you can see that there's quite a few of these different things that we've defined for the database. But what we're going to want to do is we want to change collection name, we want to add some values to it, and we want to change section name, and we want to change username. So in the collection name thing here, once you click on it, it'll highlight that row. And then down at the very bottom where it says coded values, this is where you can add to the list. Now a lot of people will use codes for things to kind of abbreviate. They may use numbers to represent things. So that's why there's a code column where you may put a number and then a description column. But in the geodatabase, when you're working with it, you will always see the description. If you ever exported your data, say you wanted to share it with somebody else and you exported it to a shapefile, if you had numbers filled in here, it would just give people a list of numbers, which are not very useful. So therefore, we have the code and description of the same exact thing. So we just want to add some information to here. We want to add that this is our Ericaceae collection of plants. We want to have that in our drop-down list. So you can just click in the blank space under Other and type it in. If you hit the Tab button, you can do the same thing on the other side. And then hit the Apply button, and now that's part of our list. And we're going to do the same thing for section name, so scroll down to that. Click on section name, and again, this is our South Ericaceae section, so we're going to type in South Ericaceae. And then hit Apply. And then we'll repeat that one more time for username. So scroll down until you see the username, click on it, and then type in your name in this field. And if you know that you're going to have other people that are going to be working on your data, you could type their names in as well. All right, and then we're done with that, so we're going to hit OK. And then we can hit the pin here to hide our catalog window. And now we'll start editing again. So off the editor menu, click Start Editing. And then grab the Edit tool, which is right next to the word Editor on the Editor toolbar. Double click on our feature. And then we want to look at the attributes of this and change it. So third button from the right on the Editor toolbar opens up our attributes. And now under section name, we can click on it, and there we go. There's our South Ericaceae section. And under collection name is our Ericaceae collection. And under username, you can put your name in there for both update and survey. And now we've got everything we want. So that's the general procedure for adding values to a list. when the correct values that you want aren't there. Okay, so now we finished this mass planting, but we don't know what species of plants are inside it. So we need to put a plant center in there and fill in the taxonomy information. So again, if we go to our Create Features palette here, we need to add plant centers to that. So you right-click on plant centers, hit Edit Features, click on Organize Feature Template, click New Template, and then just skip to the Finish button. There's all of our different subtypes of plant centers, and hit Close. And now I guess a word about these is that we have our plant center feature classes set up with these different subtypes to map possibly any type of plant life you may encounter in the world. But most of these things we're probably not going to use. I don't really think that we don't really map lichenous plants in our collection. Maybe you do, but we don't. So, but anyway, those things exist. But generally, we just use, shrub and tree and vine, and we recently started using the grass one and Forber herbaceous. So those are in there. You can delete those extra subtypes if you want, but we tried to make it catch-all for any possible scenario here. Okay, so now what we're going to want to do is I know that the plant that's growing inside this mass is a shrub. So I'm going to grab the shrub symbol, and I'm going to place a point in approximately the center. It doesn't matter if it's in the center, it just needs to be somewhere inside the polygon. So I'll click and put that on the map, and right away it automatically brings up the attributes for this. Okay, so there's all kinds of attributes that we have for plant centers. Now, if you remember, I said that this plant center feature class and these plants feature classes are really basic. They're not meant to replace a plant record system. They're meant to link to one. So we just have a really basic set of information that you need to be able to basically identify your plants on the map and be able to search for them easily in the data. So it's a kind of a small subset of what you might want to know. Well, we have the ever-present ID field, which we'll type in 1. Our type is already filled in. And I'm going to quiz Mia on the accession number of this plant.
They're all like A54.
Yeah, we're going to go and make up one. A54. 0, 1, 2, 3. All right, that's very creative, Mia. Thank you. And now, if you're a BG-based user, you may be familiar with the qualifier field. So generally, when you have a plant, an accession number can be applied to a number of different plants. If you fill in the qualifier, it identifies this plant as being different from another plant with the same accession number. So what I recommend that you do is if you don't have BG-based qualifiers, just fill in the plant center ID again here, and that will make it so that, which are the same as the object ID, and then you will always have a unique number for your plants. And now we can fill in all the genus and species and epithet information about the plant. You can also go back and do this later if you like and just fill in the scientific name, but we've broken the scientific name up into all the different subparts so that you can search for it very easily. So if you wanted to select all the plants of the same genus, it's really easy to do in this fashion. So we can type in this stuff right now. I happen to know that this is an Arctostaphylos. Hey Mia, what plant is this?
I think those are all the Warren Roberts.
I think it's Howard McMinn, but what do you think it is?
There's like right along there's like 4 Warren Roberts just there.
You think it's Warren Roberts? So is it Densiflora? Maybe.
I don't remember what
You can make up any name you want. If you want to make a new plant, this is your chance to do it.
It's funny because it's an Arctostaphylos that actually doesn't really grow very well where we are, and we joke that our assistant director of horticulture is slowly killing off Warren Roberts, who's our superintendent.
I'm going to go with Densiflora. You guys can make up whatever you'd like to put in there. And I know that it has a cultivar name. I'm pretty sure that this is Howard McMinn, even though that Mia thinks it seems it's Warren Roberts, but we'll go with Howard McMinn. Okay, so we've got we have a genus, a species, and a cultivar name. If there's any of this other information, if you know that it's a hybrid, you can click on this, and the different hybrid symbols come available to you. If it has a rank, a forma, a subspecies, a variety, you can enter that information in there. If it has a trade name, you can put that in there. If there's any additional information, such as pink flowered form or any of those weird little things that come up with taxonomy, there's a description field to add that stuff in there. And then the general idea is that you concatenate all that information to the complete scientific name in the scientific name field. And there's only a couple fields that we require to be filled in on this, and scientific name is one of them. So if you don't know what the scientific name is, leave it as unknown, but don't leave the field blank because it affects how the labels are created and the rest of the functionality in this thing. So right now I'm going to type the complete scientific name in this field. Oh, in the cultivar name field, I recommend that when you type the cultivar name in, do not use the quotes. But when you type in the complete scientific name, this is how it will be reflected in the label. So then I recommend using the quotes. You can use the quotes in the cultivar name field, but it just makes it a little bit more difficult to search for things. Okay, and another important characteristic of this is that if we have a field here for plant size. Now, if this was a tree that we were just using a center point for, we'd actually measure the canopy radius or diameter of that plant and enter that in this field. But since, this is part of a mass planting, part of the way that the model's set up is that a center point that's part of a mass planting, we always give a plant size of 0 for, because we have that polygon that shows you exactly how big it is. So by putting in 0, the data model knows that this is a mass planting and it treats it differently. So make sure you put in 0 for mass plantings. And then if you want to use different inches, we've given you a list of different inches that you may measure stuff in. I'm sure you're not going to measure your plant in kilometers, but if you wanted to, you could. And now the section name, we've created that drop-down list, or we added the values to it, so now we can just quickly select that from the list. And same with collection name. And now we have a field here for reference grid. So if you have a grid system set up for your garden and you want to say that this plant is in grid cell A14, you can type that information in here. Mia?
What do you think in the plant centers label? I know why for our purposes, but I think kind of in the data model as a whole, a lot of people use family.
Yeah, we have not put family in there, and we should probably put family in there. And it's very easy to add. If you wanted to add family, in fact, maybe we'll go through that exercise to add that.
No, she just asked me. We don't use it in that context.
Yeah. Generally, the information that we have stored in this Plant Centers feature class is just what you need to make your maps. So unless you put families on your maps or you wanted to label families on your maps, we didn't bother to store that information in there because there's lots of information we could store. You may want to know if it's wild collected or not, things like that. There's lots of information that you could have in here, but we've kept it very basic. Okay, so if you had a reference grid cell system set up for your garden, you could put information in there. There's fields here for latitude and longitude, which I can show you how to calculate these automatically. And traditionally, these latitude and longitude values are what you would store in your plant records database. So if you use something like BGBase, it has fields for X and Y coordinates for them. And generally, you store those in lat and long values. So we can address that a little bit later. Again, there's the survey date field. Click on that to add today's date in there because we're just surveying this today. And then the username, now your name should come up on this list, so you can add that. Update date, again, is going to be today, and the username, same. We have a status field in here. It always defaults to alive, assuming that if you're mapping it, it's alive. But you can select dead or removed on here, and this field allows you to be able to save the location of plants when they die or they're removed, because sometimes they come back. So you can do what's called a definition query, where in the plant center layer properties, you can say that you only want to see the plants that are alive. And then the dead and removed plants will disappear off your map, but the data will still be there in the event that the plant comes back. You can just turn it back on. Exactly.
Maybe you planted the same tree over the past 40 years in the same area and it keeps dying.
Right. Don't do it again. Okay, and then there's a really important field here for mass planting ID, and this is what's going to link this plant center to that mass planting. So we know that that was the first mass planting we drew, so we're going to give that a number of 1. And then it also has a planting area ID here that would basically link this plant to the planting area. Now, I don't actually remember what the ID of this planting area was, so I'm going to have to check that out. So I'm just going to hit OK on this really quick. Then I'm going to grab the Identify tool, which is the eye with the blue circle. And then I'm going to click on the planting area that it's in. And you can see that this Identify tool just grabbed the information on the topmost layer in here. And we don't really want that. We want to know what the planting area is. So from here, scroll down to planting area and select that. You can go ahead and click on that planting area again, and now it brings up the information about it. And you can see that the planting area ID is 2, and that's the number that we're going to need to enter back there. So we'll close that, and now we need to get back to our attributes on our plant center. So we hit the Attributes tab here in the lower right. And we can scroll down, and in planting area ID, enter the number 2. And then if you want any additional comments about this plant, maybe it needs some maintenance, maybe you need somebody to go out in the field to check on it, you can put some information there about that. Okay, and that pretty much takes care of how to add a plant center. Now, one thing I just noticed here is that up on the top here, it's reporting the cultivar name under plant center, and I actually wanted to report the full scientific name. So I'm going to go and change some options to make that report. So if you go into the plant center layer properties, from the table of contents, right click on plant center, hit properties, and go to the display tab. You can see where it says display expression field here. If you change this to scientific name, that's what's going to show up on that list. And you can see that by doing that, it didn't actually change it, but if I click off that feature and then reselect it, oops, it gets all kinds of other stuff too. It now was reporting the complete scientific name for that plant up there. And a couple other things that are good to note here is that now we've got this, we've got our plant center here, and if we expand the information next to our Archistaphylos, it's got information about our mass planting here. So we can click on that, and it's got our mass planting and all the information about that. And again, you can see that the mass planting, it's got South Ericaceae, which is the name of the section, but maybe you want that to actually report the planting type. So you could go into mass planting and do the same thing and change that to planting type. And now, one thing that's also very interesting is if we clicked on our section boundary here, you can see that in the upper right, we expand our section, we see our South Ericaceae section, and now we see our planting area. There's our 3 planting areas that we've drawn in. And in our southwestern planting area, here's our plant center. We can see that this plant center is inside of that planting area. We can also see that it is part of a mass planting. So now you can see how all this information starts to be connected together. And if you wanted to, say, run a report on all the plants that are inside your South Ericaceae section, you could do that very easily because the database is now smart and it's connected all that information together. Now, one thing that we probably want to do now is maybe we want to put a label on this plant so that we can see what it is without having to query it. So what we could do is we're going to want to select that plant first. And sometimes when you're selecting things, points especially get to be very tough when there's multiple layers of information on top of one another. And there's a couple ways you can deal with that. You can select it, and then by holding the Shift key, you can deselect the other things that you're not interested in so that you just get your plant center. Or you can also control selection by using this little thing in the table of contents here. Is you can do list by selection, and you can turn off, I think, maybe it's not in here, it used to be in here. know that you can do selection. Where is it? Used to be here. I don't know. I think they moved it in that version. You know where it is in this version now?
Yeah.
With set selectable layers?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know where they did with it.
I'll have to figure it out.
Yeah. They change things in versions and then we forget where they are. Can't figure it out. But anyway, for now, just go ahead and click on the point with the Select Features tool. And then if there's other things that are highlighted, just click the Shift key and click on them and they'll go away. Okay, and to verify that we just have that one plant selected here, you can see it up in the upper right. We have our Arctostaphylos densiflora selected. Now I want to create a label for this guy. So in my table of contents, you can go to List by Drawing Order, which is the button over on the far left here if it's not already on. And then click on Plant Center, right-click on it, and from the Selection menu here, select Annotate Selected Features. And it'll bring up this window to ask you, do you want this label to be a mass planting or a plant center? And because we know that this one's a mass, we're going to unclick Plant Center and click OK. And it creates a label for us that has our scientific name and then our accession number on there. And if you wanted to add different stuff on the map, perhaps maybe you are interested in putting the family of each plant on the map, you can add that in there by modifying this in the Plant Center Annotation feature class. Okay, let's practice, and let's do a plant center without a mass so we can see how that's done. Okay, so to do that, we'll go back to the Create Features palette here. And we're going to scroll down, and I think I want to do I know where there's a couple of sequoias in here that aren't really part of our RKC selection, but maybe we'll do that. So we'll do a tree. I'm going to select tree, and I know that the tree that I want to map is a little bit further over, so I'm going to grab the pan tool. I'll pan over to that tree. I wanted to map this guy right here. So again, I'm going to hit tree here, and then go to the approximate, what looks like the center of that plant, and put the point in. And now it's got the same attributes panel, and you can just go ahead and fill some stuff in. So our plant center ID is going to be 2. Mia, what's the accession number of the sequoia dendron? A74 2001, we'll call it. And again, you can just make, we don't know what the qualifier is on this, but we just make it equal to the plant center ID, and we know we're safe. And it is, the genus is sequoia dendron. And the species is Giganteum, right? And again, we'll fill in the scientific name with both the genus and the species. And now this one, actually, we want to put a plant size in for this. So since we're doing this in the office, and this is the quick and dirty way, we can actually measure what the plant size is on this. But to do that, we have to close this window. So hit OK. And then up from this toolbar here, we can grab the measure tool. And then you can click on the center of the plant and measure out to what looks to be the edge of the plant on the map. And it says that it's 7.05 feet. Now we can enter those attributes by clicking on the Attributes tab here. And we'll go down, and you may want to change it to feet if you want, but I recommend keeping all your plant sizes in the same units. That way they're it's a little easier for reporting and stuff, and so you don't have things in different units. So I'm going to put in, is that right? No, 84, right? 84 inches. Is that right? Yeah, that's the right math. 84 inches, and then the section name. It's in our same section. It's part of our Ericaceae collection. I don't think it is actually, so it's in another collection of plants. And today's date. And my name. And there we go. And since it's not part of a mass planting, we don't have to enter an ID. But it is in a planting area, so we're going to want to find out what that ID of that planting area is. So you can just grab that identify tool, click on the planting area. It brings up the information. It's planting ID number 1. So we can close that, enter planting area ID is 1, and then we're good to go. Is there any questions on that process? So, yeah, like I said, you may choose to map your collections this way. I know that Missouri Botanic Garden uses a tablet PC to run ArcGIS on it, and they just go outside and actually map their plants that way. At UC Davis, we use GPS to map our collections. But it just depends on the level of accuracy that you're interested in. But this can be a really cost-effective way to create collection maps pretty easily. Yeah, if you have a densely, a lot of evergreens, you're not going to be able to see your plants. But another effective method is to measure the distances between objects you can see. So I know before we used GPS that they would go out and measure the distance from, say, a tree that they did know the location to, and then measure the distance from the sidewalk and get an approximate location of where that plant was. So one thing that came up is that we're interested in adding a family name field to this. So if we wanted to do that, the first thing we have to do is actually stop editing. And we will save our edits. And then we can go into the table of this Plant Centers feature class by right-clicking on it and hit Open Attribute Table. And you'll see all the same information in here as we saw in our attributes panel outside there, outside of the table. But I want to add a family. So let's see, I think that we can go in the options here, under table options. Scroll down until you see add field. And then we can type in a name for this. We can type it in as family. And then it asks you what kind of data type it's going to be. And generally, most fields you're going to use text for, unless they're truly a numeric. If you're measuring something, then you would use integer for whole numbers, or float or double for numbers that have decimal point. We're going to do text. The alias is if you wanted to type a name that had, say, spaces in it, you could put the alias in here as an alternate name. I'll just put in family as the same. If you want to put it in a default value, you can do that. If you wanted to assign a domain to it, say you wanted to create a domain that has a list of all the families that you have in your garden, in the same place that we went and added those values to that list, you could go in there and create a new one. And then in here you can assign it. So when I click on this field, it gives me a list of all the different things that I have, all the different domains that I have assigned. But I don't want anything, so I'm going to leave it blank. And then it has a field for the length. For how long the family name could be. I don't think there's any families that are over 50 characters in length, but I think there's a couple really long ones, so I'm going to put 100 just to be safe. And then we'll hit OK. And then what that does is it adds that field to the very end of the table. So if you scroll down, there's our family field now. And you could, in the same way that we added information to that, you could go and you could select this plant here. And then hit the Attributes button on our editor toolbar. Oh, we're not editing though, so we have to start editing. Start editing. And then we hit the Attributes button and go down to the end here, and we can type in our family if you want to. And you can do that for all the other plants too. So that's a really easy way to add more information to the database so that you can basically customize the data model to have whatever you'd like to have in it. Any questions on that process so far? Okay. You guys feeling good about that? All right. Okay, so what we're going to do now, I think, is we're going to switch gears a little bit, and we're going to talk about how we can get this data onto a mobile device and actually interact with it out in the field.